What we will do today is we will talk with multiple founders, primarily of communication or infrastructure tools. And what I want to do is basically just give the perspective of how founders in that space think. I believe there's multiple people in the audience who are thinking about starting something on their own. There's multiple people in the audience who are currently looking for good solutions. What I want to just share here is basically the POV of a founder who's in the middle of this. And I'm in the lucky situation to have, for example, Joop of remote.com here, who is literally working on one of the biggest opportunities right now in this space. And yeah, that's my plan for the day. We will do each of them about 15 minutes long. And it will be like speed, heavy rotation. And I think we can get going. Cool. Hey, Joop, thanks for joining.
Well, welcome, Andreas.
The first time we met, I told you that I believe, and by the way, full disclaimer, I'm a huge fan of remote.com and luckily also an investor in remote.com. So disclaimer for anybody, if I sound a little bit overexcited, it's mainly because I'm a big fan. But like the first time I met you, I basically said, I believed what you're doing is the Stripe opportunity of our generation. Before Stripe came, you had multiple local shitty credit card providers. You had to work with multiple of them to be even somehow functional. Each of them were a horrible experience, or you had the choice of going with somebody who is like either trying to aggregate them somehow with like a lot of hand-holding, or with somebody who is just not understanding what a startup needs. And then Stripe came along and everything changed. And I kind of feel that employment is in a very similar, and like payroll, compliance, hiring in general is like in a very similar situation right now when it comes to global teams. So yeah, congratulations on your recent $11 million raise.
Yeah, 11 million. Yeah.
And you dare to call it a seed round, right?
We got some criticism of that on Twitter as well. I mean, we are an early company and we just started working with the first few customers. So I guess it's appropriate to call it seed at that point. But yeah, so we raised 11 million in total. Company exists for about a year, and as you referenced already, so what we do is we solve international employment, payroll, benefits, and compliance for companies. So if you want to hire someone in another country, if you do it yourself, you have to figure out a way to pay them first. Then if you treat them as an employee, they have to be employed. So they need an employment agreement. So you need to find an attorney. You need to find an accountant. You probably need to start an entity locally. From that moment forward, you'll forever have to maintain that entity. And then you have to figure out how benefits work in that country. And then once you have done all of those things, you need to start running payroll every month in that country too. And then if you hire someone else in another country as your next hire, you can do all of that over. So what we do is we solve that entire problem for you. So what we do is you come to us, you say, I want to hire Jane. This is how much I want to pay her. Then we just take care of everything else. So we have a local entity. We take care of payroll. We can provide any benefits that you want to offer. And all in a compliant way.
And for me as a user, how can I imagine this like on my end? Is this like a normal web app, or like how does this look like?
Yeah, we try to make it pretty, but very boring. So like there's almost nothing to it. So if you're an employer or if you're an employee, it's a very simple app. You can look at payroll. If you're an employer, you can look at your payslip as employee. You can enter your information. And if you want to, employ someone new, and then you just click add employee, and you fill out their email address, and that's all there is to it. And we take care of everything else. So the app itself, we try to make very much like a hands-off kind of thing. Below that is an immense complexity that we've been fighting for over a year now. But yeah.
So it's like from the outside, I can imagine it's somewhere like if I'm currently using, let's say, Gusto. It's similar to Gusto, but for global employment, global teams.
Yeah, it's similar. I think in a lot of ways it's even simpler because we are the actual employer locally, so we have to run payroll independent of what you do. So even if you don't click a button in our interface, we'll still run payroll. So yeah, it really is incredibly simple. But essentially, yeah, it is something like a Gusto or a similar kind of thing, but specifically for international hires. And then the core part is that we are an actual employer of record. So we have an actual entity in every country you operate in. We become the actual employer. So we have to, really get our stuff in order to be able to do that.
Like one question I have here is, a lot of people are not aware of this, but if I internationally hire somebody as a contractor, for example, in Germany, and this person works full-time for me, I actually go into different kinds of risk. Like, what kind of risk would I go into?
Yes. So if you hire someone and that person, you treat them like any other employee that you have, and they work for you full-time, you owe them an employment agreement. In other words, they have to be an employee and not a contractor. If you don't do that, you risk misclassification or being caught as misclassified. And that means that in most cases, the tax authority, for example, will chase you for taxes that you might have missed, or even benefits you might have had to pay in other circumstances to the employee. And some countries are extremely strict about this. Most Western European countries are very strict about this, and some countries a little bit less so. But in general, what we advise is that if you have the opportunity to directly employ someone from day one, that is what we recommend you do, even if the need is not immediately there. In any case, once you have several employees in one country, and they are all employed, you all have them as contractors, that risk in any country becomes larger and larger. And you will have to either work through remote or one of our competitors, or you have to set up your own entity. And that's a huge cost, both in time and money.
Makes complete sense. For those, like in German, it's actually literally called fake employment. And the big risk here is actually that not even the state is like suing you, but like that employer, if you for some reason disagree, you have to fire that person as a contractor. That person can actually make you liable for additional benefits, additional costs that you did not anticipate. So it's actually a realistic risk. It's not like a complete makeup. Like, I know companies that ran into this situation. Like, it's not like anything out of the ordinary. So once you roll payroll, once you have them employed, where do you think you can take this? Of course, like, you want to do all the countries in the world, but like, what other services and feature are you thinking like you could build on top of that? Because that's technically a platform at some point, right?
Yeah, we want to help companies with the entire pipeline. So going from hiring, finding people, onboarding them, retaining them, and then making sure those people are happy and that they can actually do their job well, making sure that they're well compensated. There's a few challenges that we have. I think specifically around benefits, options is something that has not been solved at all. So that is something.
Are you going to solve it?
We're going to solve it. It will take significant time. It's immensely complicated for everybody involved today, and like, if we have a solution for us, so we have a long road to go in that sense. But I hope somewhere next year we can start to tackle that.
When we did options internationally for Product Hunt, our lawyers were pretty much thinking we were crazy. Yeah. Like it was like, to do it properly legally back then with like people in India, Israel, Australia, and multiple other countries, we were like running into a lot of problems.
Yeah.
Adrian, what are you trying to tell me?
So basically, you have 2 minutes left with him. So that's why I'm here.
So we're cutting it down to 10. Okay, fair enough. Cool. My big final question here is, how do you structure costs? Because I think this is one of the most complicated things that you can do when it comes to employment. Like, how do you think about, how do you communicate such a complex topic to your customers even? How do you communicate your own costs to the customers? How do you think about this right now? Because this is where a lot of the PEO companies really struggle and fail and appear really expensive.
I find the secret to complicated things is to be extremely transparent. So the way we work is that if you work with us, for one, we can tell you upfront. I can tell you right now what it costs. It costs 10% over total cost of employment. And total cost of employment is everything related to employing someone. And so if you work with us, or even if you're just interested, what we do is we show you exactly what you're going to pay, how much, where it goes, how much of that is our fee, and what we do with that. So we try to be extremely transparent about this, and this is something, our fee is very, very simple for that reason, but also we give you an insight of how that goes for each individual country, which for each country is different, which is really pain.
Ashwin, I want to ask one more question. I'm sorry for that. Joop, you have right now, let's say, several dozen of potential founders in the audience. What kind of company would you like to see exist? Doesn't need to necessarily be remote focused, but like what would you like to see exist?
Wow. I think that we have a long way to go in terms of creating presence for teams that work distributed. So if you can improve on that experience, and I think there's many people working on it, but I say there's still a massive space for that kind of stuff. That would be pretty cool.
Feeling like present, feeling connected, seeing who else is working, seeing that they also care about the work they do, these kind of things.
Exactly. And I think we can, all the work that we do is online, or almost all of it. All of it is connected. How can we achieve a way that we can work on one hand asynchronously, but on the other hand still feel connected to our colleagues and feel like we're close, especially something that wouldn't necessarily require active input all the time. And I think that's not solved. And I think it's a hard thing to solve. And I'm curious how people might address that.
Cool. Appreciate your time. Thanks so much for your time. If anybody wants to talk to Joop, he will be a little bit around on one table. Just feel free to ping him and ask any questions.
Thanks, Andreas.